Weeks later, following a night on patrol, Spider-Man returns home to find the black cat waiting for him, holding a device that she stole from the Kingpin. Stunned that she is not dead, Peter excitedly embraces Felicia, and when he says that he's glad that she's alive, she asks him to show her. Lost in the moment, Peter pulls up his mask and kisses her, but he quickly pulls away as he recalls the heartache she previously caused him. Peter demands an explanation for her survival, but Felicia resists, stating she wants intimacy rather than an interrogation, and insists there is no way she could have let him know she was still alive. As Peter presses for answers, he recalls their last encounter, from her attempt to rob the mob, to the chase at the docks, and her apparent death in the water. Then, Felicia explains that she slipped out of her webbed-up costume and found her way to Dr. Octopus's lair. There, she learned of a dangerous bomb activator, and after hearing Oc's plan to destroy the city, she stole the device from the Kingpin to thwart him. Spider-Man is stunned by the tale, to which Felicia gloats that she is the best burglar in the business. She then asks for Peter's protection and proposes that he return to her to be her lover. At first, Spidey responds that she's nuts, but after considering he can just be Spider-Man around her with no troubles with his double life, he gives in and agrees. Felicia leads him back to her place, and after they enter, she suggests they snuggle in bed for a while. When Peter counters that she is still in danger, she flirts with him until he gives in. While Felicia changes, Peter wonders why he cares for a criminal but convinces himself she wants to reform, citing her theft of the activator as proof she can do good, but also admits to himself that he is a bit attracted to her shady side. Suddenly, Peter's spider sense flares as Dr. Octopus crashes in and takes Felicia hostage. Peter engages in battle, declaring that the black cat is his lady. Hearing this, Felicia becomes determined not to let Otto ruin her chance at a life with Spider-Man. Together, they battle Doc Ock until the villain retrieves the activator and escapes with Felicia as his hostage once again. Spider-Man tracks them to the Owl's lair, where he fights through a gang of thugs. Meanwhile, Otto hunts for the owl and knocks Felicia unconscious to focus on his rival. Upon waking, Felicia manages to swipe the activator again. She demands an apology from Otto for his mistreatment, but he easily overpowers her and reclaims the device. Spidey then lunges at Otto, again referring to Felicia as his girl, and after Otto grabs them both, Felicia takes a moment to flirt with Spider-Man. Finally reaching his breaking point, Otto begins bashing Felicia against a wall. The sight sends Peter into a blind rage, and he overpowers Otto, brutally beating him and ripping his mechanical arms from his body. With the threat ended, an injured Felicia calls out to Spider-Man, and the two spend the following moments held in each other's embrace. However, the moment of peace is interrupted as armed henchmen open fire on the couple. Spider-Man immediately leaps into battle, and after he webs up all the henchmen, Felicia is struck by how protectively he treats her, certain now that he must love her. She then leaps into action herself, preventing Otto's arms from taking the detonator before smashing it. Seeing this, Ock traps Felicia in his arms, swearing vengeance. Felicia is then gunned down by the armed henchmen, as she questions if this is the price she has to pay for being good. Consumed by rage, Peter pulls one of Otto's arms off of her and rips it in half before checking Felicia's injuries. Realizing her condition is critical, he crashes through a window and swings her desperately toward the hospital, knowing it's her only hope for survival. Upon his arrival, Peter kicks open the hospital door and desperately calls for help as Felicia's blood splatters onto the floor from her limp body. The doctors rush over and demand that Spider-Man put her on the stretcher as she must undergo an emergency operation. He then watches as the doctors hook her up to a respirator and rush her down the hall to surgery. For a few moments, he peers through the door to watch as the surgery begins, and then waits in the hall until he receives word that her condition has finally stabilized. As the sunrise pierces through the windows, Peter realizes he must leave to attend his college exams. Throughout the testing, he can't help but think of Kat's condition, and the moment he finishes, he rushes back to the hospital to watch over her. Standing by her bedside, Peter is overcome by guilt for failing to protect her, and then, upon realizing that he cannot keep his loved one safe, he breaks down in tears. When Felicia finally awakens, she finds it sweet that Spider-Man is crying for her and begins to speak to him. Seeing that she will truly be okay, Peter's sorrow turns to joy, and he thanks the heavens that she is alive. In the following days, Spider-Man stays by Felicia's side as she recovers. However, their peace is shattered when Dr. Octopus returns with repaired mechanical arms, seeking revenge. While Spidey successfully holds him off, the struggle causes Felicia's life support to be torn away, forcing doctors to rush in and restabilize her. Later, while Felicia is still recovering, Spidey sneaks into the hospital to give her flowers. After a short encounter with the beefed-up security, he has a moment alone with her, and Felicia tells him she had a near-death experience and saw her father's spirit. His spirit said that she had another chance at life and not to make the same mistakes. Also, recalling how Spider-Man risked everything to save her from Dr. Octopus, Felicia declares that all this has convinced her that she needs to reform and she is going to start living for the man she loves, Spider-Man. However, their moment is interrupted by Felicia's mother, who is overjoyed to hear her daughter renouncing her father's criminal legacy. After ordering the police to maintain guard over Felicia, Spider-Man leaves to tend to his personal affairs. Later, with his affairs in order, Peter returns to the hospital. As Felicia hugs Spider-Man and confesses her love for him, he decides to unmask to reveal his secret identity to her. However, Felicia stops him, insisting she isn't ready and admitting she prefers her men to be mysterious. There is no time to argue the point, as Dr. Octopus arrives. While Spider-Man moves to take down his nemesis once and for all, Felicia is hurried out of the hospital and transported to a secure location for her safety. Meanwhile, after a long absence, Mary Jane Watson re-enters Peter's life. When Peter next returns to the hospital, he finds Felicia frustrated with her medication and anxious about her mounting medical bills. In a playful moment, she calls him Tiger, a nickname that immediately triggers memories of Mary Jane. Peter, visibly unsettled, asks her never to call him that again. As he swings away, he is frustrated to find that his feelings for Mary Jane haven't completely faded as he had assumed. As the days pass, Spidey continues to visit Felicia, providing company and affection. Felicia declares that she is bored as she grows increasingly restless, eager to be discharged from the hospital. While Peter reassures her that she'll be better soon, he privately worries about their future. Their romance moved so quickly that he hasn't had the chance to truly process his feelings for her. On Felicia's end, she grows concerned about Peter constantly risking his life for others and wishes she could help him, but with her confinement in the hospital, there is nothing she can do. Before she is fully recovered, Felicia decides she is well enough to head into the city again as the Black Cat. During her outing, she stops to rescue a stray kitten but is forced to rest, realizing her body is still in a weakened state. Back at the hospital, Spider-Man arrives to find her bed empty and is furious when she finally returns. He reminds her she isn't healthy enough to be out and expresses disappointment that she hasn't retired the Black Cat persona. Felicia explains that she doesn't want to return to crime. She wants to wear the costume so they can be a team. Fearful that her involvement will only lead to more injuries, Peter leaves to clear his head. Left alone in her hospital room, Felicia drifts into a daydream. She imagines Spider-Man arriving with her costume to take her on an outing in the city. In her fantasy, they board a private boat where he unmasks to reveal he is actually a famous movie star. However, when a doctor enters the room, the illusion is shattered and Felicia is snapped back to reality. Finally, the day arrives for Felicia to be released from the hospital. After she introduces Spider-Man to her mother, she is eager to jump back into a life of adventure by his side, but he argues that she still needs to fully recover, much to her dismay. Fortunately, the city has covered all of Felicia's medical bills as a gesture of gratitude for the duo's role in stopping Dr. Octopus. When the taxi arrives to take the Hardys home, Spider-Man kisses Felicia goodbye. However, as he watches the cab pull away, Peter is left with a lingering sense of worry regarding the complicated nature of their relationship. Later, after spending time with Mary Jane as friends, Peter begins to suspect that she still has feelings for him. This makes him think of how all his girlfriends have loved him as Peter, while the Black Cat is only in love with Spider-Man. Setting these reflections aside, Peter stops by Felicia's apartment to find her taking a bath. After she gets dressed and lets him in through the window, they share a kiss as Felicia curiously begins to unmask him. However, Peter pulls away at the last second, as he does not want to ruin what he has with her. Though Felicia is disappointed by his refusal, they decide to move past the tension with a dinner date. During the meal, Felicia confesses she loves Spider-Man, finding his life of crime fighting exciting, and then explains that the man behind the mask doesn't really matter to her. When she expresses a desire to join him on his nighttime patrols, Peter argues that it is far too dangerous and prepares to leave. Felicia stands her ground, insisting she won't need a babysitter. Unable to sway her, Peter relents and allows her to join him across the city rooftops. As they move through the city, Peter learns a surprising truth. Felicia's supposed bad luck powers were actually a series of elaborate hoaxes that she staged during their past encounters. Once again, this makes him fear that without powers, Felicia is too vulnerable to danger, and he suggests that they go home. However, their patrol is suddenly interrupted by an attack from the Hobgoblin. During the skirmish, Felicia proves to be more of a liability than an asset, and in a desperate attempt to protect Spider-Man, she inadvertently gets in his way, allowing the Hobgoblin to escape. As the villain mocks them and flies off, A frustrated Spider-Man snaps at Felicia, telling her he could have captured the villain if she hadn't intervened. Devastated, Felicia protests that she was only trying to save him, feeling deeply discouraged that though she tried her best to help, it still wasn't good enough. Then, Peter tries to swing away to contemplate the future of their relationship, but Felicia chases him down, sensing his distress. When she catches up, they once again clash over his fears for her safety. Felicia remains firm, insisting that she needs adventure to feel alive, and without it, she may as well be dead. Realizing that further avoidance isn't working, Peter decides the best way forward is to open up to each other, no more secrets. He takes Felicia to the Bugle to show her where he works, and she is surprised to discover that he uses a secret identity and has a mundane day job. However, their conversation is cut short when the villainous fly crashes into the building. Peter briefly explains his history with the fly before leaping into action, but when he tells Felicia to stay back, she refuses to be sidelined and follows after him. A battle then ensues against the fly, and it eventually leads them down to the printing press, until Spider-Man finally webs up the villain. After this, Spider-Man and the Black Cat make a stop on a nearby rooftop, where she states that seeing his civilian job was exciting, and then asks if she can see where he lives. After wrestling with the doubt that the Black Cat could love both Spider-Man and Peter Parker, he finally decides to take her to his place and web-slings her towards his home. As they swing toward his apartment, Felicia is swept up in the joy of the moment, even leaping from Spider-Man's arms to perform exuberant acrobatics across the skyline. Her excitement sours, however, when they arrive at a mundane rooftop. She is visibly confused, having imagined that as a famous superhero, Spider-Man would live somewhere far more extraordinary. Feeling a sense of unease, Felicia follows Spider-Man through the bathroom skylight and into the rest of his apartment, where she looks around in disbelief, certain he must be joking about living there. Peter defensively explains that he is a photojournalist who must live within his means, and being Spider-Man has never made him rich. When a disappointed Felicia asks why he doesn't use his powers for profit, Peter explains that money isn't his motivation. He begins to tell her about his normal upbringing and how his Uncle Ben was murdered, and the great lesson he learned from it that changed the course of his life. As he slowly begins to unmask, he tells her that his life isn't about fame, fortune, or thrill-seeking, but a great duty born from a sense of responsibility. Finally, he reveals his face, introducing himself as Peter Parker. Gazing upon Peter for the first time, Felicia is horrified and is barely able to look at him, and then asks him to please put his mask back on. The reaction stings, and Peter realizes in that moment that she is only attracted to the mask and not the man underneath. The second he pulls the mask back over his face, Felicia's joy returns. She embraces him, dismissively stating that his civilian identity and home are unimportant. Then, she pulls him back toward the window, eager to return to the night where she claims they can both be who they truly are. Angry, hurt, and confused, Peter struggles while acknowledging that he is both Peter Parker and Spider-Man. He wonders how Felicia can love one half while rejecting the other, and how he could possibly only be one side of himself. Despite his pain, he leaps out the window to follow the Black Cat into the night, where the subject of his identity resurfaces. Felicia explains that while she understands his need for a silly secret identity, she doesn't want it to interfere with their relationship, and further asks him to be only Spider-Man whenever they are together. As Peter contemplates the idea of abandoning his civilian life completely, he leans in to kiss Felicia, but the moment is shattered by a sudden gunshot. Though they briefly argue again over her safety, Felicia refuses to be sidelined and follows him to break up a band of armed criminals. During the fight, Kat watches Spider-Man with admiration, convinced he is everything she wants in a man. Then, when they are surrounded, the duo uses their combined abilities to make quick work of the thugs. When the dust settles, Felicia is briefly winded. Peter catches her in his arms and suggests they return to his apartment to rest, but she firmly refuses, insisting they go to her home instead. Peter realizes that she simply doesn't want to be reminded of his boring life as Peter Parker. While it stings to think how she only cares about the mask, he decides to just go with it, saying he loves her, and Felicia responds that she loves her Spider-Man. As they swing toward her home, a heavy question lingers. How many nights can Peter survive with only the mask and no room for the man beneath it? A short time later, while Felicia sleeps at her apartment, Peter paces restlessly. He reflects on how much his life has changed since the Black Cat entered it, and how he cares for her, yet he remains troubled that she only cares for him as Spider-Man. He finds himself wondering what their future could possibly hold, even briefly imagining a spider family where they live their entire lives in costume. When Felicia awakens, Peter tells her that she looks beautiful before they head out into the city together. But Peter's thoughts soon turn to Felicia's safety, and as screams break out, they are led into a battle with Mr. Hyde. As Felicia leaps into battle, Peter is gripped by fear that she will be seriously injured again, recalling how she was nearly killed in the battle with Dr. Octopus. He warns her to stay back, insisting that Hyde is far out of her league, but Felicia ignores him and soon engages the villain anyway. The recklessness proves costly as Hyde catches her by the leg and begins to exert enough force to break her in two. To save her, Peter sacrifices himself, taking the brunt of Hyde's fury and allowing himself to be bashed through a solid brick wall. Horrified by the sight, Felicia buries her face in her hands, convinced that Spider-Man is dead and that it's all her fault. Fueled by rage and desperation, Felicia confronts Hyde, vowing to do everything in her power to hurt him. However, Hyde is suddenly struck with darts and taken down by another superpowered figure known as the Cobra. Then, as Felicia sees Peter stirring amidst the rubble, she realizes that he is alive. Still, knowing that she is a liability in battle, she then flees the scene, determined to find a way to gain actual superpowers and leaving Spider-Man behind to recover on his own.